All righty. How are you doing, Kevin?
Hey, I'm well, Dana. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We are going to be talking about a very interesting strategy today, right? Peter Thiel. I'm sure a lot of us are very familiar with Peter. But if you want to do a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Kevin Rocco. I was the founder and CEO of a medical device startup called Biorez. Started in 2016, came to LSI for many years, raising money, and sold the company to CONMED in August of 2022. Worked for CONMED for 2 years, helping scale our technology. I was a bio-brace implant for sports medicine, and then I left in August. So now I'm doing a lot of angel investing and nerding out on some of this financial stuff.
I love it. My name is Dana Udumulla. I am currently the head of strategic relations at Madison Trust company. And before that, I was the investments manager for 4 years. So I had a lot of time to dabble in all sorts of alternative investments. By trade, I'm a financial analyst, your usual, Wall Street traditional securities. But once you get into the world of alternative investments, you fall in love. And that's how I ended up at LSI today. So welcome to our workshop today. Now, we have a few objectives for the workshop today, and really Kevin and I put this together because we really wanted to provide a little exposure on a few strategies. And the main one is we want to talk a little bit about what Peter Thiel did back in 1999. And then I love the fact that Kevin here is a success story. He really implemented the same strategy using Madison Trust. And we want to give some time for Kevin to actually share his experience and how he funded his startup through his Roth IRA and the results, the amazing positive results of it. And of course, let's have a really interactive conversation about how can self-directed IRAs, Roth IRAs be used to invest and raise capital for startups?
Sounds good. Yeah, listen, I just wanted to raise awareness that this is an option. And I think it's important for both investors and entrepreneurs to be aware of it, not only for themselves, but potential sources of capital to go raise.
Absolutely. Now, I'd like to pose a question to the audience here. How many of you guys, by show of hands, have self-directed IRAs? Wonderful. Now, how many of you guys have self-directed IRAs with, let's say, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, one of the brokerage firms? Alrighty. Now, are you able to invest in assets such as real estate, private equity, precious metals, cryptocurrency, or maybe even a startup at LSI? I'm seeing a little head shake. Nope.
I think hard to do.
It's right. It's very difficult to do. And if you actually go to a big firm like Charles Schwab and tell them, hey, I want to buy a piece of property, they're going to be like, well, that's interesting.
JP Morgan told me no.
There we go. I love that you're here with me, Kevin. This is great. So truly, do we have a self-directed IRA? A lot of firms like to say self-directed because they have these buckets of, mutual funds and ETFs where you're able to pick, and they call that self-directed. But true self-directed IRAs are the IRAs where you, as the IRA account holder, are able to diversify your retirement portfolio into true alternative investments. Now we're talking about investments outside of traditional securities. We're talking about a lot of other investments, including real estate, including startups, crowdfunding, precious metals, crypto, private lending. So let's go back. Can I go back? Let's see. Oh, there we go. So a little bit of a background on Madison Trust. Kevin, you're very familiar with Madison Trust as one of our very valued clients. Madison Trust is one of the industry's leading self-directed IRAs. We have about $4.8 billion worth of alternative investments under our portfolio, ranges from multiple different alternative assets. We have about 20,000 clients and 95% retention rate. We did start about 10 years ago, and really funny story. The reason Madison Trust started is because our CEO had a self-directed IRA at another firm, and the process was too cumbersome. It was too complex, and that's one of the pain points I always get. And he thought to himself, I could do this better. And that's exactly what he did. He set up a firm where customer service and flexibility and easy processes, easy, efficient processes were created so investors can actually truly diversify their portfolios. Kevin, what other assets do you think you can invest using your Madison Trust account?
Well, I learned a lot preparing for this panel. It's a lot more than I anticipated. Obviously, spoiler alert, I invested in my own company using a self-directed Roth IRA, but I was really surprised to see what you could do. And what I find the most interesting is what other people are doing. You know, what are people actually doing out there? And you obviously have that data.
Absolutely. So right on the screen, we have some of our most common, most in-demand alternative investments. And it can go from real estate. We have, people investing in tangible property, multifamily. We have a lot of people doing commercial real estate, fix and flips, office buildings. We also have a lot of private equity, people getting into different types of private equity funds. Precious metals, whenever inflation goes up, that's where everyone tries to go. They want to try to get some precious metals into their retirement accounts. When the cryptocurrency craze was going on, a lot of people invested in cryptocurrency through their IRAs as well. And of course, startups, crowdfunding. But I think, Kevin, and I told this to you a little bit before when we met, my favorite investments have been the most creative and fascinating ones. There has been Arabian racehorses. There has been yachts, marinas, airplane hangars, Broadway production. So a lot of people have invested into alternative investments, projects that they're passionate about. And it's so much easier to talk about the things you can't invest in. And there's only 3 things you can't invest in using your IRA. That is S corporations, collectibles like fine art, antiques, and life insurance. Other than that, anything can be really made into an alternative investment. So what's your next investment now, Kevin?
Oh, I'm here meeting with companies. I think I'm gonna stick with medtech, no Arabian horses.
For now. So we wanted to talk a bit about the Peter Thiel strategy, which is what you actually implemented. How many of us here are familiar with what Peter Thiel did back in 1999?
I didn't know this, by the way. That's true.
Perfect. I saw one hand up there too. So it's really a fascinating story. Peter Thiel is one of the founders of PayPal. Back in 1999, he actually invested less than $2,000 using his Roth IRA. Initial shares of PayPal at $0.001 per share. He bought about 1.7 million shares. Fast forward to 2002, eBay acquires PayPal and he gets a $55 million exit. What's important to remember here is he did this using his Roth IRA. Roth IRAs, essentially, when you meet certain qualifying factors, which is you have the IRA for 5 years, and by the time you are taking the funds out, 59 and a half, let's say, age, it's tax-free. But Peter didn't stop there. What he did is he then took that $55 million and proceeded to reinvest in multiple other high-growth startups, Facebook being one of them. Now, fast forward to 2019, Peter Thiel had a massive Roth IRA of $5 billion, tax-free. When this actually, ProPublica was the first organization that actually brought this to light, there was a lot of commotion. Congress was trying to get involved. Personally, when Congress tries to get involved with Roth IRAs, I'm not a fan. Like that's our business. We want to keep the Roth IRAs, but it seems like Peter Thiel found that loophole in the IRS. How can you actually utilize an account to invest and then reinvest and actually have those appreciations completely tax-free? Who wouldn't like an account at the time of retirement you're able to pull $5 billion out and not pay 1 penny of taxes? And that really is the Peter Thiel strategy, which, Kevin, without even knowing, you did it yourself.
Just Google.
Just Google.
Just Googling it. It was sketchy, and that was part of why I wanted to get this to do this talk. Obviously, I had a very small Roth IRA. I had put some money in when I was in grad school. I just happened to be lucky and invest some of that into Tesla, and so from 2019 to 2020, Tesla really took off a lot. And I remembered thinking I was doing a financing. I was kind of cash poor, but I had maybe $60,000 in a Roth IRA. most of it was in Tesla shares, and Tesla crossed like $800 billion market cap. They were combined worth more than the 9 next auto manufacturers. And I'm all for technology, but they were knocking on the door of Apple. It's like, this just seems insane to me. And at the same time, the financing for Biorez, I think we were doing a seed round and our valuation was probably about $10 million. I'm like, well, hang on a second. I'm holding like basically nothing of Tesla worth $800 billion. Or I have my own company that I truly believe so much in and I spend all my time at. Is there some way to maybe actually take that money and invest it in Biorez at $10 million? I mean, I felt like it was like an arbitrage, like obviously I had conviction and that's what it takes, I think, to be an early stage entrepreneur. But it's important to note that I didn't do this at the beginning. I founded the company in 2016. So I had actually done 2 prior seed rounds. We had patents, we had de-risked it, we had animal data. It's like, oh, this thing actually works. So it was kind of the right inflection point for me where I would just personally rather own Biorez shares at $10 million than Tesla at $800 billion. And that's actually what I did. I sold most of my position in Tesla, opened an account with Madison Trust, wired the money. I'd never heard of Madison Trust. Nobody I knew actually had done anything. So I was like, there's a chance I don't get that back. Send it all away. And sure enough, it was actually very easy to do. Set up the account, wired it over to them. They looked at the paperwork, verified it was legitimate, and they became my custodian for my Roth IRA. And then they basically wire it back to the company. They're now holding the paper for Biorez shares within the Madison account. And then kind of fast forward, I did it again in a subsequent financing. So I ended up with basically my entire Roth IRA in Biorez. And then fast forward to the end on acquisition, the upfront payment proceeds go to the Madison account. I've since pulled some of that money out, put it into other things, kind of more conservative. But I am keeping an account at Madison to potentially do more. I don't think I'm going to go as aggressive as Peter Thiel did, but he clearly created a venture capital kind of family office for himself within his Roth, which is pretty crazy. And I thought it was important to share that story, not only because it's something that entrepreneurs should consider doing for themselves, but also because I meet a lot of doctors in particular that do a lot of angel investing. And a lot of times I think they're cash poor, but maybe retirement rich. And they don't necessarily need their IRA or Roth IRA to begin with. So I've had a lot of surgeons, I put up a thing on LinkedIn that I was coming out here and doing this. I had a number of surgeons call me and say, how do I do that? So I guess public service announcement here obviously is this exists. It works. You can do it with Madison Trust and spread the word.
Thank you so much. I really do hope you are able to continue to reinvest using your Roth IRA at Madison Trust. And that's why we really want to have a conversation about this topic, right? Being here at LSI, we got here on Sunday and we've been having some conversations. And the conversation I'm always hearing is, this is a thing. You can do this. So you're telling me as a CEO, a founder, investor, I can use my IRA to invest in startups. And then the other side of the coin is, you're telling me startups can raise capital using retirement money? Did we just unlock a whole new funding source for startups who are here to really look for capital?
Yeah, it was a shocking number. There's $14 trillion in IRAs in the United States. $14 trillion.
14 trillion.
I forgot what I put up. It was like 80 times more, 50 times more than the entire venture deals done last year. So there's a lot of money out there that is probably mostly parked in target date retirement accounts and S&P 500 and other things. And if you've been following S&P 500 recently, I mean, it's not risk-free. And I think that there's a case to be made for alternative investments to have, 10% of your portfolio. So even if you took 10% of 14 trillion, there's $1.4 trillion out there suitable for alternative investment. And obviously for alternative investment, it makes sense to put it into a tax protected account like a Roth or a regular IRA.
Absolutely. Now the 14 trillion is just the IRAs. It's actually $42 trillion of retirement funds across different retirement plans. We're talking about 401ks, 403bs. We're talking about IRAs. So IRAs, that 14 trillion is just individual retirement accounts. And those other qualified retirement plans can be rolled into an IRA, a self-directed IRA, to invest into alternative investments. So really, you're looking at a huge pool of untapped capital.
Yeah. Yeah. And most people, I think, know this, but I'll share it anyways. I recently did this. I had a 401k. It wasn't very large. I only worked for a couple of years with that company. I had a 401k kind of out there. So I converted that, rolled that into an IRA. And then recently, I converted that into a Roth. So you can go 401k into IRA into Roth. You just pay the taxes on it up front. But if you're going to invest in it for 10 plus years, it's probably worth taking your medicine, doing that, and having the long-term benefit.
Absolutely.
I'm obviously not a retirement professional. Don't sue me. Please don't sue me. I'm not a Roth or IRA expert. These are just things that I did and I think make sense.
I'm glad you put the disclaimer out there for all of us. So I think it's also very important to differentiate between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, right? Because one, the traditional IRA is what we call a pre-tax IRA versus a Roth IRA is what we call a post-tax IRA. And when getting into self-directed IRAs, knowing the type of IRA you're getting into is very important. So with a traditional, you basically are deferring the taxes. You can utilize your traditional self-directed IRA to get into multiple different investments. But the caveat here is when you do retire and you are taking funds out, we call that distributions. Whenever we decide to retire, like say I'm 60, you are paying your income tax bracket at that time when you're taking the distributions out, because the only thing you did is you deferred your taxes up until retirement. But up until that point, everything within your IRA continues to grow tax deferred. So there is no capital gains tax. There's no taxes in that growth period. It only comes up at the end. Versus the Roth IRA, the beauty of it is, Kevin, you mentioned it beautifully, right? If you don't have Roth money, you don't have post-tax money, you're able to convert your traditional, that is your pre-tax money, into post-tax money, pay the taxes right now up front. So like say you have $100,000, you are doing a Roth conversion, you pay the taxes on the $100,000 up front right now. That $100,000 now became post-tax money. You invest that $100,000 into a startup, and if you're lucky like Peter Thiel, like say you get a $500,000 appreciation in your investment, that $400,000, the difference is completely now tax-free. So you do not have to pay the taxes on that $400,000 of profit you got into your initial principal investment of $100,000. And that's why a lot of people, they like to start early, especially with the Roth IRA.
There were two other things that were attractive to me. Number one is you don't have to take required minimum distributions, right? So you don't have to take it. You can kind of hang on to it. That's important because if you're in an IRA, you have to take it and you have to pay taxes. And I don't know what my tax rate is going to be when I'm 60. So who knows? Or what the government will do. And then the second is the inheritance. If this is not your primary source of retirement, to have that available potentially tax-free for inheritance. So no requirement minimum distributions and potentially pass it on.
Absolutely. Now those
tax-free.
are very key important parts, right? With a traditional IRA, you're required to start taking RMD. So distributions out beginning age 73. With a Roth IRA, you do not have that RMD requirement. If you have your Roth IRA for 5 years, by the time you're 59 and a half, you're able to essentially withdraw funds from your Roth IRA completely tax-free. And to your point, Kevin, the inheritance tax is a very important part, right? Because sometimes these IRAs, you don't end up using the entire IRA to your lifespan. You will be having beneficiaries that will inherit these IRAs, and inheritance tax depends on every state. Every state is very different for inheritance tax. But with a Roth IRA, the beneficiary does not get the inheritance tax either. So essentially, you're able to pass down this valuable retirement tool to your beneficiaries, to your kids, to your grandchildren, without that tax component. Another thing I always get asked is, well, Dana, I earn too much. Because that is another situation. If you are a high income earner, you're not able to set up a Roth IRA directly and contribute to it. And that's where backdoor Roth conversions come in. You're able to set up a traditional IRA. Anyone can set up a traditional IRA. Do the conversion, that is, convert the pre-tax money into post-tax money, pay the taxes upfront right now on the traditional money, and then have a Roth IRA. So there's a lot of, I like to call them IRS loopholes, that is out there that a lot of people aren't aware of, that actually helps us increase retirement nest egg. I like to even call it like generational wealth, because truly a Roth IRA is that.
Well, these are the rules. I mean, so, playing by the rules. It is interesting that I think it was during the Bush era, right, that they allowed the back door. That wasn't a feature. And then they made essentially, because everybody who converts pays taxes on that money, it's actually creating a tax, even though it's really a tax break.
So it was back in 2010. There used to be a lot of regulations. If you are earning over $100,000, you are limited in doing a Roth conversion as well. So in that era, actually, they took that off. They took that completely out. And now you are able to do a backdoor Roth conversion at any income level. The contributions are the things where a lot of people get confused, because the contribution limits technically are $7,000 if you're 50 and under, $8,000 if you're 50 and older. But if you have retirement money elsewhere, if you have another IRA, a 401k, a 403b, you're able to roll that over into a Roth IRA, essentially making your limit to put into a Roth IRA unlimited. If you have, like, say, $100,000 somewhere else, you're able to roll that into a Roth IRA. So you're not stuck with those $7,000, $8,000 contribution limits, which a lot of people have issues with. What I really would like to talk to you, Kevin, about is how can this be used for founders, investors, entrepreneurs at LSI?
Yeah, so I guess also a part of the story I left out is I had a couple of angel investors that popped up on the cap table with not their name. It was like, what the heck is going on here? And it was, in fact, people taking advantage of this. So maybe folks in the room, I'm curious, has anybody actually done this? Have they invested within a Roth or within a self-directed? Yeah, fantastic. And for the entrepreneurs, did anybody have angel investors that have done that? Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, the word is out. People are doing it. No one ever actually explained it to me. So when I saw that happening, that's good. And then I think in particular, as I said earlier, clinicians that just don't have the time, they're just so focused on medicine, usually, that they want to invest. They don't necessarily know how. They don't think they can. Present this as an option if you are still doing angel rounds.
Absolutely. So really, the two sides of the coin, right? So you, as an investor, as a founder, you're able to fund your own startup through a Roth IRA. But on the other side, when you are having conversations with your investors, sometimes giving them an option that, hey, not only can you use your non-qualified money, your taxable money, you have the option of investing with us. Getting into this at an early stage using your Roth IRA is a game changer. Retirement money is what I call patient capital, because no one invests using their retirement money to get it out in 6 months or a year or even 5 years. When an individual makes an investment through a retirement money, they keep it for the long term, because that's their retirement money. It's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years even, right? So it is the perfect source of funding for a lot of the startups I've been talking to at LSI. Really, to just go over real quickly about the process of setting up an IRA, like Kevin said, you explained it really well, Kevin.
Give Dana a call.
That too. Give me a call for sure. But you can set up an account really easy online and then get it funded. Roll funds over from another qualified retirement plan into a Roth IRA, and then work with our team, like Kevin said. Take a look at the documents. We don't conduct a due diligence or a risk analysis to confirm if this startup is going to be the next big thing, right? We do conduct a due diligence to ensure your retirement money is protected in the startup, because sometimes there are companies that do certain things, like say it includes cannabis. Federally, it's still illegal, so your retirement money cannot be invested into a company that deals with cannabis. So we will ensure, when we do our due diligence, we are making sure your retirement money is not going to get penalized. But other than that, it is self-directed. So you do have that freedom and that power to make that investment decision and let us know, instruct us, and we will invest. Typically, we are able to do open fund invest 2 weeks or under.
That's pretty quick.
So really, the lessons that if there's a few things you guys can take away today, it really is, for CEOs, investors, entrepreneurs, getting in early at the early low valuation stages are really it's the game changer, right? Especially when there is a huge exponential opportunity for growth. But also having the conversation, especially if you have your own startup with your investors, letting them know that, hey, we have multiple options of funding, investing into this. That's the other thing. I travel a lot, Kevin, just like you. I know you're a traveler yourself. And a lot of the times when I have conversations with people, what they tell me is that I never knew. I'm like, well, the question is always easy. We can accept your retirement money. You have the option of using your retirement money. Doctors, for instance, a lot of surgeons, we actually have a lot of medical professionals utilizing Madison Trust to get into alternative investments because they are cash poor, like you said, right? Which means they have a high net worth. But no person who is really savvy with their finances will have $100,000 just lying in a savings account. They are going to be having that in multiple other things. And retirement funds is one of those huge nest eggs that they always have, especially in the West Coast, I feel like Silicon Valley. There's a lot of retirement accounts here, and people want to get into different types of alternative investments. Very important to remember how to structure your investment. It's all fun and games, right, for us to be able to create a Roth IRA, $55 million tax-free. However, just like there are all these amazing tools that the IRS has provided us, it's very important we are mindful when dealing with retirement money that we understand some of the consequences if you don't know what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, I think most people in this room are pretty well versed in setting this up, and they're not going to necessarily create the round just for themselves. So they're existing rounds, and obviously, when in doubt, talk to a lawyer, talk to an accountant.
Absolutely. So something that you might want to keep in mind is something called prohibited transactions. So there are certain individuals, and the IRA account holder is considered a disqualified individual to the IRA investments themselves. According to the IRS, disqualified individuals can't get personal benefit from their IRA's investments. So I can actually give you a real life example. Kevin, we talked about this. I actually had a fund manager, a real estate investment firm. He had his clients investing their retirement funds through us. He himself actually invested through his Madison Trust account into the fund too. And that's completely legal. You are able to invest even though you are a controlling person because, again, it's not that you can't do it. The only issue was the IRA, because the documentation that was created, it was all a blanket documents, right? Everyone uses the same documents. There was a management fee that the IRA paid the fund manager. So now the fund manager's IRA investment paid a management fee to the fund manager personally, which in turn caused a prohibited transaction unknown to him. Because again, prohibited transactions it's not sexy. It's not the things we talk about, right? And also, he was unaware that this was a thing. Especially during the subscription period, the documents have the management fees. So it was not something that came up.
So what was the consequence?
The consequence was his IRA lost its tax advantage as of the 1st of January of that year because it was considered a prohibited transaction. So this is why we need to be a little careful when we are structuring these things to ensure that personally you are not getting benefit from the IRA's investments. And the best example is that the IRA cannot pay a management fee to the IRA account holder personally. You cannot get compensated from your IRA funds. But like Kevin said, when in doubt, it is best that you consult your legal counsel. And I always like to tell some of my investment sponsors, private groups we work with, if you are not sure, it's not a black and white situation and it's gray. And when it comes to retirement money and IRS, a lot of things can be gray. Get an attorney to bless this mess because that letter is going to be your savior. And opinion letters with the IRS, even if it's the same situation, they have different verdicts. But knowing that you are already protected with an attorney letter, that really is the game changer. A little bit about raising capital.
Yeah,
but
we have some time for questions.
Exactly. So I think we covered a lot of things, and I'm sure a lot of you guys understand what this concept of raising money using self-directed IRAs for startups. I think we should open up for questions, right, Kevin?
I think that would be great. And obviously one thing that we didn't talk about here is QSBS. I'm sure everybody's familiar.
Qualified small business stocks.
Another option, and we're not going to talk about it here, but make sure you know what that is and look into that so that you don't have to unnecessarily do this, but do both.
Actually, I was going to say that is what's recommended. Do both.
Yeah.
to both. But let's actually open up for some questions and answers. The mic is right here, so if anyone wants to come and ask a question here, or just
shout it out.
Yeah.
I'll just shout out. So, what could that fund manager have done?
So what he could have done before it went, like hit their bank's account, is first, of course, legal counsel. Always consult legal counsel. We have had situations where legal counsel would send the wire back to us, provide a letter signed off by the legal counsel, informing that that happened by mistake. Given that the fund manager is personally the fund manager of the investment, they are not taking any management fees because the IRA's investment is separate from the fund manager's compensation. So we have had that where it was reversed and a letter was placed on file to confirm an attorney reviewed this. This was a mistake. It was not intentional. The fund manager did not receive the management fee. So that would have mitigated that situation. But unfortunately, when the audit did happen, it was too late, and it was actually found out through an audit. Great question. Yes.
What about secondaries? I know, obviously, a lot of us are earlier stage. We're not a secondaries yet, but if you're investing through the Roth IRA, does that change then whether or not you can subsequently do secondaries on those payments?
We actually have a lot of clients doing secondaries because we don't really have restrictions. Now, that's actually another restriction with, I think, qualified small business stocks. You can't actually invest in secondaries. It actually has to be at the initial stages.
Sorry, the question is whether or not if the founder is getting secondaries out, right, if you're actually taking a percentage out, then does that make it now a prohibited trade?
As long as it's not because of the investment of the IRA. So it has to be separate. So because sometimes founders also have investments personally outside of the IRA. If they're getting secondaries because of that, their personal investment, that's fine. But they cannot get secondaries because of the Roth IRA's investment. Very separate. Yes.
Yeah. Can friends and family who invest who are safe take that safe, park it into an IRA, and then just leave it there until the company gets its first price right, and then it converts to preferred share? Is that possible?
Yes, as long as the initial investment into the safe happens through the IRA. That means your friend cannot purchase, like invest in the safe personally and then transfer it to the IRA. He will need to invest into the safe using his IRA as the investor, and then it'll stay in the IRA until it becomes preferred equity.
So the funds have to be in the IRA, and those funds need to purchase.
Correct. That's a great point you bring up. If you have personal investments, like, shares already, because you have already invested in them personally, you cannot transfer that into an IRA because that transfer is considered a prohibited transaction. So you always have to get into the investment directly from your IRA as the investor initially. Yes.
Does control either through operations in the entity that's being invested in or ownership with that entity have a bearing on the transaction?
So let me just rephrase the question a little bit. So you're asking if, like, say, the investor personally has a controlling position.
Yeah, like let's say in our case as entrepreneurs, right? And does our ownership have any bearing on whether we can make that investment, whether it could be prohibited or not? Or in a case where we own all of it, maybe, or, where's the line? Is there a line?
The line really is 50% or more. If you own that entity 50% or more, it's considered, the entity itself is considered a disqualified entity to your IRA. So if you are 51% owner of this entity, your IRA will not be able to invest into that entity. However, I always recommend anyone, when you're teetering between that 40 to 50%, get an attorney letter. Because you know what? An attorney will review the structure and let you know, like, even though you have a majority ownership in this entity, because of X, Y, and Z, this is not considered a prohibited transaction. If you're a controlling person but do not have any ownership in the entity, so for instance, a fund manager, right? They might not have any ownership, an investments manager in the company itself, but they're the investments manager. They are making the decisions that will drive performance. I would definitely recommend getting an attorney letter just because the position holds so much power, and the IRS opinion letters are different. They review every situation very differently, and you never want to be in a situation where they're like, well, they had too much power, they were too controlling, and they did indirectly personally benefit from their IRA's investment.
Cool. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys. Hopefully that was interesting.
Absolutely. And here's my contact information as well as our teams. We will be here for the next few days as well. Definitely stop by because everyone's situation is different. And I'm sure we can definitely find ways how you can utilize self-directed IRAs. But thank you so much for coming today.